When we design the environments, it's always about having the people in them feeling well, being able to do what they want to do or need to do in the best possible way.
Absolutely, yeah.
Whether you're working in the restaurant or eating in the restaurant or working in the office or having a meeting in the office, for us it's all about the user experience, really.
Vivian, welcome. Thank you for coming and sharing your time with us. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, James, for having me.
Ah.
I'm glad to be here.
Good, thank you. I asked you to do this quite a while ago, and when we started thinking about doing this podcast, you actually one of the first people I thought that would be really interesting to interview.
Oh, thank you.
Because of course, interior architects and what you do as a business, and a lot of our audience I think are sort of more technology based, and really I wanted them to get an understanding of what you do and how interior architects can fit into the technology process, for want of a better phrase, and
that's a good question.
And really just to understand like how people design offices.
Okay.
Yeah, that's it. So I guess first of all, tell us a little bit about Spectrum, your business, and how it came about and what you do.
Yep. So I'm an interior architect, and I work a lot with offices. And with offices comes like these environments that we're in now, lobbies, conference areas, and restaurants, and so. And we started Spectrum 7 years ago, and we were 8 people then, and now we're about 15 to 20. Differs a little bit. We do offices and hotels, and the last few years they have become much more like each other. The hotel lobby feel is also in the office nowadays, and vice versa. Hotels want people to sit in the lobby and work. And I think this place that we are in now is a good example of this merge of different environments. And I think it's all about having people feel good, actually, because we know that when people feel good, are comfortable, they also do a better work. So many people have really understood that and want their offices to be designed in a way that promotes people's well-being, really.
Yeah. And again, user experience, I think, is something I'd like to touch on definitely in a bit. I mean,
and for us, when we design the environments, it's always about having the people in them feeling well, being able to do what they want to do or need to do in the best possible way.
Absolutely, yeah.
Whether you're working in the restaurant or eating in the restaurant or working in the office or having a meeting in the office, for us it's all about the user experience, really. Many people, sorry to say, but many people think it's all about, design and color and shapes and making the environment look good. But actually, it doesn't matter how good it looks if it doesn't work.
And how do you marry those two things? So how do you...
We always start with function.
Okay.
We always start with interviews and surveys and on-site visits just to try to understand what the business is about and what people are doing in a normal Tuesday, let's say, because that's what's most interesting. And after having set the setting, so to say, then we add the color schemes and the design. And these days it's also very important with branding, even in the office. And it's not about the logo. It's about the look and feel of the whole environment together.
Okay, the extension of the brand. Like
absolutely.
And their culture as well, of course.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think this is a challenge that will be just bigger and bigger after the pandemic. Yeah. It's also a problem right now because of that people can't meet. But I think this will be much more important in a near future, really.
So we just touched on that a little bit, where you sort of like the average Tuesday morning, where you perhaps like going in and trying to understand how this company works. So would that be sort of like that's almost the starting point, right, of your relationship with the client?
Yes.
So you could then just sort of describe like what happens after that, and
yes, I think there's a situation very often where the management team has not aligned in their decisions about what they want the office to be or why they even want to have an office. And it's not so many weeks ago that actually a management team asked me, do you think that we should have an office at all? And I was like, well, I'm not Boston Consulting Group.
You're not paying me enough to make that decision.
No, but I understand why they ask. And they were just doing the job good in the way that they asked, because this is the most important thing that they have to make decisions on. What do we want our office to be? What do we want it for? And perhaps after the pandemic, why should people even come here? So we have to add functions and look and feel and attributes that are attractive for people to come to the office. Why would you go into the office?
Great question. I mean, for the social interaction and the collaboration and the general sense of being involved in something that's not just about you, right? That this is bigger and you're all pulling towards something more important.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because the work you do is mostly digitally.
That's right.
The work I do includes actually a lot of physical material. So I have to go to the office to do that. But in your world, you're like a tech guy, so you could do everything remote and digitally, but you still want to go there to meet people.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. No, it is. You've hit on an important point there. I think it's not. I feel as well that there is. We get some benefit from that. We're social creatures at the end of the day, right? I think we need some of that interaction.
And I think that because of this, we will need to change the way that we design offices. I think that the pandemic is not the only factor affecting how we design offices for the future, because these are trends that we have been seeing for quite a few years, that people want to go to the office to have meetings or interact or solve problems together, be creative if you want. And so for like the past 10 years, there has been a very, very clear trend that people are leaving their desks, going into the meeting spaces, which are cramped. And the only discussion about meeting spaces, most of the discussion about these meeting spaces have been about ventilation. How many people can we put into this room for how long a time before the air is not working for us anymore? But perhaps now, wanting to have the office for other reasons, we will also look into how we design the meeting spaces. And my belief is that we will see more of the open meeting areas, because most meetings that we have are not secret for anyone. It's just like, we work together.
Right. Yeah. So this concept of being stuck in a small room with a few other
hope
people.
It's gone.
Yeah.
Or for a short time, it's okay. Naturally, it is. It will always be having a conversation that nobody's supposed to hear, for example. But not booking that room for like 4 hours or a whole day to work together. I don't think so.
So, I mean, let's just say, for example, if somebody's listening to this podcast who, is trying to think more like, they run an office and they're trying to work through this process we're going through, the pandemic, return to the office, trying to work out how many of their staff are going to be working from home. Do you have some advice for them about like how they can start to think differently about the office?
I will say this again. The management team need to work together with what will they have their office for? What's the purpose of their office? Not a office, their office. Because it's very different from company to company. If you're like having lots of educations or courses, or if you're just hacking code, that's quite different. So every company needs to focus on their own needs first, and then we can start helping them designing their office.
And those decisions, right, about, I mean, and you mentioned it a little bit earlier, right, like about how when you first interact with the client, you'll go in, observe. I mean, essentially that's data collection, right?
Yep, absolutely.
And is that something that they should be doing? Because I just think the management team, great, yeah, obviously they have a good sense of what they're doing, how they run their business, what they want to achieve, but how do they get that data?
Would you answer a question about
Sure.
your daily work day differently if I asked or if your manager asked you?
I would answer it differently if you asked me.
That's why we ask. Because if the management team asks the question, and normally they do, you know, they have a happy employee, what do you call it, statistics or whatever. But they tend to get different answers than we do when we ask more or less the same questions. And that has been my experience for all the years that I have been working with office design, that people tend to tell me or my colleagues other things, more things. And I usually say when the project's through, we know so much about this company that the management really would like to know, and you know, they never ask.
Yeah, it's interesting. Maybe
Then it's over.
Right. Yeah.
But really, perhaps that's when you should start asking questions again.
Right, and kind of this was something I knew that I wanted to ask you, kind of follows on from that, right? And I think what you've described is that methodology, right, of how you work. And what I'm interested in is technology, right? And do you have a sense, or have you been using technology
Yes, we
to
have been
impact
using
your
sensors.
methodology?
Yep.
Yeah.
And I'm quite surprised, really, that not more companies or people want us to do that or want to invest in that themselves, because that kind of data is so good to have. Instead of counting, you know, going around in the office counting people. And these days, when there's nobody there and we have to start start thinking about what do we want to ask people about what they want when they come back to the office. We have to do that digitally, but I think there's a fear of being surveyed.
No, I agree. I mean,
So surveys work quite well.
Yeah, and almost a combination of the two, right? Like if you can...
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. And how do you use these sensors then? Can you give a description of like how you've used them on a project?
We have put them under the desks, measuring which desks are used for how long time. Actually, that's more or less it.
Okay.
So far.
And do you have some plans maybe to extend that?
Yes, actually, I have been very interested in this question for a few years, because when I learned that we are now installing sensors to quite a huge scale in modern buildings, I started thinking about how could we use that data, and can we use that for the benefit of the people in the building. And only like 1.5 years ago, we had several meetings with tech companies, huge ones as well, asking them about this and how can we use the data that they already collect. And they was like, we have never thought about it.
Wow, yeah.
Because the sensors are for, you know, energy savings and ventilation systems steering them and so. But to try to use already installed sensors in a way that benefits people was like, why have I never thought about this? And I was actually a research manager, and he had his own research team in Boston. I think they were about 200 people or something. And he was like, I've never thought about it. And I was like, well, I'm the interior architect. You know, like it's like the child in the emperor's new clothes.
Right.
Yeah. It's like somebody has to ask.
Cool. Yeah. I know that's fascinating, and I think that is a really interesting take on how we could think, you know, differently about using some technology that's already there, to, repurposing it and using it for things.
Yes. But I think that, and now this is your business, you know this better than me, but having people interact with the technology so that we can get the data that we want and they can behave in the way that they need to, I think perhaps the apps and the mobile phone is the way to do it.
Yeah, and we're working on a project now to research that as well, and I think it is fascinating that I have seen, you know, over the last few years, much more focus on, let's say, the user experience within the workplace. I think people are taking it more seriously. they understand. It ties into some of the things you mentioned before, like about the culture of a company and wanting to instill those values in people, but also give them a great, experience at work. Yes. Yeah, and I was seeing some people doing, producing apps, which I think definitely help that process. Things just as simple as, offering like food delivery service,
yes.
but all the way to things that are a bit more technical, like being able to kind of optimize your environment if it's too cold, or maybe, things like that. Yeah, so, and again, I think perhaps companies like you and could think as well about how to use that data, if you can get access to it, to help understand how people are using the building.
Absolutely.
And not just from a perspective of, okay, well, like no one's in this area, or this doesn't get used, we don't need this space, we can reduce the space, right? But then also to thinking like these post-occupancy like evaluations of like how can we optimize what we're doing, how can we create spaces that allow for serendipitous interactions.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think it's interesting to know where people are in a building and why. And it can be as easy as, the sun is always shining in that corner, so it's either too hot or too bright. But we can fix that. So that would be a smart way, I think, to use these sensors, for example. Probably they would just confirm things that we already know or guess.
But that's okay.
People tend to trust numbers,
Yeah.
So that's great anyway.
Yeah, and it's okay to validate assumptions.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I would really like that.
And I think it's a combination, as you said. Like, I think can use the data to validate assumptions, but also to to augment perhaps like some of those user surveys that we talked about as well. Like, okay, so well, we're getting some feel for that people are saying this to us, and what does the data tell us as well?
Yes, exactly. Yeah, and I would really like to have some functions in there, in this magical app, that you're supposed to create, that makes me smarter when I'm in a building, in an office. That helps me really. Perhaps if you take an office as an example, we know that the brain benefits from variation, not going the same path every day, trying new ones, doing things with your left hand and so.
Mm-hmm.
So if I had something telling me that now, today you should really try to go in this direction instead, or take those stairs, or sit in that sunny corner, like small tips or something, I would probably do that, because I stand up when my watch tells me to. And I think many people does that. And like booking meetings, for example, there's a large program which has a calendar and an email function that has made us stupid, because it tells us that every meeting should start at the whole hour, at 9 and 10 and 11, and should last for 1 hour. And we believe in that. We do that. Everybody does it. When did you book a meeting at 10:15?
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah.
When? Have you ever done it?
Probably once. Maybe.
Try it. People are shocked. And now when you have all these digital meetings as well, they can really start and stop at the same second.
Yeah.
So why don't we book 10 minutes?
I can imagine it's also a waste of time, right? So you book that hour, and then maybe you've talked about what you needed to talk about, and then the rest of the time you're just filling it with things perhaps that you don't need to talk about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Perhaps.
Yeah.
So do you think there will be a system for me that makes me smarter?
I hope so. I think that there has to be an element of, it's not going to be one size fits all. I think that's what I'm trying to say. Been. Right, yeah. So, like, I think it's great that you obviously, whoever the companies that design the apps or design the systems to do this, they want these to scale totally, but I think they're going to have to build flexibility, within that system. So, mentioning about the kind of guiding people around variation, which I think is really interesting
And
thought.
in a personalized way.
Yeah, but you need to have some knowledge, I think, of the building to be able to do that. So
Yes, but most people tend to go to the same buildings for work, for example.
Yeah. No, absolutely. But I mean, within the building.
Yeah.
So you gave the example of, let's say, choosing to sit. So you generally sit here, but why not today have some variation? Try over there.
Yes.
Like, maybe they can build in some flexibility there, or like, which is perfectly easy to do, I think.
Yeah, I think so too, because we leave traces everywhere.
Yeah.
Using our phones, for example.
Yeah.
So
oh yeah, and they
getting
could
all
work
these
out.
ads about Cocker Spaniels that I get now. How did that happen? So I think doing the same thing for me in like an office environment wouldn't be impossible, would it?
No, absolutely not. No. Yeah, I think that's a great.
Because people have
great
so
thought.
strong habits. And then, I don't know, but after the pandemic, perhaps we will also have the ingredient fear in, going out in society again, being with other people again, being with lots of other people again. How many people will be afraid? And do we need to do something to make them feel comfortable or safe? Because fear is very strong. That's a very strong feeling. Preventing people really to do new things. And I've seen that so many times, just moving people's desks,
Makes a difference.
in a building, perhaps even, or when a company is moving from Kista to Solna or something, people are so scared of the change. And how will that be now, from now on? Will we have new arguments for not doing things? Or it's like, I survived, I can do anything. What do you think?
I think the first. I think there will be some fear around that. Do you think, that made me think of, behavioral economics, nudging behavior? I mean, is that something that you consider when you're designing? Yeah.
Oh, yes, absolutely. We even have a company called Nudging Office.
Okay, right.
You didn't know
No, I didn't know.
No. And actually, we started that before the Nobel Prize winner got his prize on nudging. And then we put it down for a while because I was thinking nobody's going to believe that we started this before. But we did. And that is because the environments that we create really can create behaviors. If you and I were standing up having this conversation, we would behave differently. And so I know that when we design offices, in Sweden it's standard to have a height adjustable table. And very few people use that button. Very few people. Most people use it just to adjust the height because you're tall and I'm short. And never again. At least when you're not moving around, changing desks. And then we know that if we put in a stand table, just beside, they go there and stand up. Why is that? You bring your laptop and you stand up. You could do that with that button, but they don't. Why is that?
I have no idea. Do you know?
No, but I think it's because they see it.
Okay.
So when you see it, you use it, you get the idea. Oh, I perhaps should try that one.
So it's almost that they don't have. Well, they're not thinking about it. I suppose they're concentrating on another task, but that other standing desk reminds them that there's that possibility. So
Yes.
then they take it.
Yes, and creating spaces for meeting, for example. If you have 10 conference rooms and they're all looking the same, why even bother to change the room? But if we instead create rooms with a variety of furniture, perhaps putting everything on wheel in a large rooms, making it possible for everybody to just refurnish, recreate the room every time for every meeting, without having to be 2 meter tall and very strong person. I should do it, be able to do it. So then I can suddenly make my own setting for the meeting that I want to have, the behavior that I want to have. Perhaps putting everybody in a circle without a table in the middle. That does something with people and the meeting. Just try it sometime.
Right, yeah, all of removing the table, just having people
absolutely.
sit. I mean, it almost feels naked, right? Or you remove some barrier. Yeah, it's fascinating.
This is examples, I think, of nudging in the office. But you have to know what you want to nudge. What behavior do you want to strive for?
And again, that comes back to what you were saying about the management, understanding the overarching goal.
And I think the classic one is having only one coffee machine. So everybody has to go there. And everybody does. Coffee is a strong tool.
And then that creates little
serendipity and meetings. And
yeah.
And learning to know each other, culture.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. That's a great point.
And actually the first time I heard of that, and we did that in that project, was an IT company at that time called Intensia. And it was like 2000. And their manager, he said that every day when I'm in the office, at 10 I will have a coffee, and we should only have coffee in one spot. And I think they were about 400 or 500 people at that time, aiming to be 900. And I don't think that happened. But, you know, so many people were just hovering over these coffee machines. When is he coming? Is he in the office today? Is he traveling? Oh, there you are. Hi. Just making culture happen. And he created that. And several years after that, coffee in the office exploded as a trend, you know, nice coffee, cappuccino and everything. And it has happened to me 2 times that these people selling the coffee machines were telling me the story about that project.
That you worked on.
Yeah. Because it was so unique, having that really nice coffee in one spot.
Interesting.
So everybody has to go there. And people do.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's a great, like you said, it's a classic, great example of creating or nudging behavior.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you one question. Do you get clients asking you for a smart office?
I think what people mean by smart office is a booking system for the conference rooms or a wayfinding system.
Because I talking to other people and conversations I've had, I know that, you know, it's not out of the ordinary for somebody to come to, you know, a company and say, we've heard this concept, or we're thinking about, like, you know, a building, can we have a smart building? So that's the reason the question. And as you said, like, one of the issues with that is what the understanding is of what it means.
Absolutely.
Right?
And, you know, before the pandemic, really, the average office worker went around with a laptop with lots of software that he or she couldn't use. Like Teams, for example. Many people have had that for a long time and never used it because they didn't have to. And suddenly everybody's just doing it because they have it. And I think it's the same thing about smart buildings, really. It has to be easy to use, and it has to be inexpensive if everybody should really want to have it, to use it. Because technology is known to be expensive and complicated and something out there, huge up there. Not for me, but if I have it in my mobile phone, it's there for me, and then I will use it, I think. So it has to be easy to use, and we have to try to explain why, of course. What's the purpose? What's in it for me? Most people ask.
Rightly so, yeah. What are they going to get out of it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's something, of course, that we think about quite a lot. And I know one of the other things that made me ask that question was just about what expectations are as well. So, okay, there's the understanding of what it means to be a smart office or a smart building, but also, like, you know, when you work with clients, I imagine part of that is like managing their expectations as well. Yeah. Like, and how do you do that? How do you walk them through that process? But then also, how do you think, you know, as we become more technologically advanced, as we put more technology in buildings, how you think you'll be able to manage that process?
In our work, we have a quite defined process, and it's, in the best of worlds, it always starts with a workshop with the management team. having them sitting in the same room, talking about things, decisions that they have to make, taking the budget, for example. I think it's very common that they do not have the same picture of the investment that they have to make. And when the goal and the frame is there, then we start working with their employees, having surveys, on-site visits, perhaps workshops as well. That's quite common. And when we have set the functionalities, then it's look and feel. And from the start, there is actually questions about technology. In an average office, it's not complicated. It's about what do we have and what do we need to invest in. And that's also something that is connected to the way they choose to work. Because if they choose to let everyone free and work mobile and from everywhere and flexibility is the big star, then of course you have to have the technology to support that. But I think that's a question that will have more or less been gone after the pandemic. Because what I hear is that most companies today are allowing their employees to work from anywhere because they have to. And I know that several has made huge investments in technology, in laptops and software to make their employees be able to work from anywhere. So I'm very interested in what is going to happen now with that question. And then we have, as I said, the booking systems for the conference rooms, for example, and the wayfinding systems that not so many actually are interested in. You know, if you can see on big screen, these spots are taken, and over here it's very spacious. But I'm also curious what that will be after the pandemic, because in a world that we know what disease and pandemics are, suddenly everybody knows, I think we will have new expectations coming to the office. And my expectations won't be the same as yours because we perhaps have different backgrounds. I think I read that 90% of all illnesses that we can have doesn't show. Do we need to start talking about that now? Why do I want more space to feel safe than you think that you need, for example? So having more flexible spaces, open spaces, where it's possible for the individual to choose how close do I want to be, how many people at any time, allows us to skip this one-size-fits-all thinking.
That's a great point.
And have variation.
Yeah. There will be, I mean...
And I think that we will benefit from having technology that supports that. So that on my way to work, I can perhaps see which areas are occupied right now. Do I want to go there, or do I want to go somewhere else? The office is very cramped today, so I choose to book a room for myself, for example, or vice versa.
No, it's a great point. That this whole pandemic is going to make us much more conscious of our health, our wellness.
And I think we need technology to support that.
Yeah, no, I agree. With there's been so much talk in the real estate industry, construction, right, about, the hybrid model of working, how long many people are going to work from home, how many people will be in the office, et cetera, which I think, ultimately that'll work itself out. It'll be a combination, I'm sure. But how's that going to affect like user experience? Because, what I see is, we've, through this process so far, like we've just made the best of a bad situation, or tried to, right? Hack it, and like a lot of people have to work from home, and they perhaps don't even have the space, and like the environment for work is not healthy or productive, and others' space is. Like, how will that? So, do you think, in some senses, your job will also be to help companies design spaces within homes? Like, That's a
discussion that we have, and I think we will have a new situation when our authorities have gone through the laws and regulations for the employers' responsibilities, because now it's if you as an employee are forced to job from home, work from home, then I, as an employer, do have responsibility for your workstation, let's say, and then I can buy it and put it in your home.
Right.
If it's your choice to work from home, and you combine that with working from the office, for example, then it's your responsibility to make sure that your home workspace is okay for you.
Okay.
But I think that probably this will change after this, and the design of home workstations that are both flexible, height adjustable, but looks as a cabinet, it's already there. Just to try to make a bit of magic, having a nice ergonomic workplace that doesn't look like it in your home.
That could become more popular.
Yeah,
sure.
and I think perhaps that also these homely workplaces, offices, will be attractive as well. And I think you mentioned it, but this crisis design that we are in now, with this black and yellow tape over desks and chairs and plexiglass everywhere, and that's not going to work for the future.
Right.
And if we want the office to be a place for creativity, serendipity, and meetings, of course we can't have this black and yellow tape on every other desk. That's an obstacle for conversation as well as collaboration.
Yeah. No, that's a great point.
So we need to think differently. We can't go on thinking that the world, the office world, will go back to what it was. I don't think we will ever go there. And it has been quite common to design offices where the desks has been smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller, just to try to fit in more and more people in the same space. Will we have that again? Do you want to work in that kind of office?
No.
No. Me neither.
That's a great point. I think that's like a good place to finish.
Yeah.
Thank you for your time. I thought made some excellent points, and I hope listeners really enjoyed it. And
I hope so too.
Good.
Thanks
again. Bye.
Bye.